Okay, welcome to tonight's Tanya class. We're studying tonight chapter 27. In Hebrew it's called Perek Chav Zayin, and we are continuing the theme from last week, which the author discussed, the importance as a foundation. Before you start any praying and Torah study and doing mitzvot, you got to be happy. If you're happy, now you're off to the races and you'll be successful. God forbid if you're not, you can try to do all the things, it's not going to move. It's like, you have this nicest car, right? An expensive car, and all the bells and whistles, and you don't put gas in the car, where are you going? Nowhere. So you need gas. Not that gas is more expensive than the car, but without gasoline, the car is not going to move. So the same thing also, happiness is key. Happiness is key. So today we're going to go into some of the challenges that people have to keep the happiness alive. So the author begins by saying, what happens if a person's a little sad? You're sad. Now, so obviously if you're sad, it's not a good thing. Why? Because you're supposed to be happy. So the author says, why are you sad? Why are you sad? So he says, very simple. He's coming up with a real, playing the devil's advocate, a real scenario. You have these negative thoughts, inappropriate thoughts, and obviously your mind's not clear. So that's a source for sadness. Now, the reality is we all know we all have minds, right? So we know what a mind is. And we know that the difference between the mind, our thought, speech, and action is very simple. Act we can do and not do. You can sit and do nothing, and guess what? You're not in trouble. Sometimes the best thing is do nothing. Speak. Obviously our tongue can get us into trouble, but you can also have the option not to talk. And we also don't talk plenty of times. And that's what? Guess what? You don't say anything, it keeps you out of trouble. When it comes to thought, you can't say, guess what? I'm not going to be thinking now. Try that? No, you're going to think exactly what you said you're not thinking about. So the problem is that our thought is constantly racing. So you can't go into park or neutral. The thoughts are moving. And some people quicker than others, but the reality is it's moving by everybody. So as you're thinking, because you're thinking about something, all of a sudden you start thinking about negative things, inappropriate things, and guess what? You start becoming sad about it. Some of these negative thoughts are not, oh my gosh. So the author says, let me ask you a question. When is this taking place? Like, what time of the day? Is it when you're working? Is it when you're trying to take care of your family? Spend time with your spouse, your kids, or go out and do some errands, whatever it may be. You're out on a productive day. And again, it could be work, it could be personal, business, pleasure, whatever it may be. And all of a sudden you have these negative thoughts. So the author says, guess what? Guess what? You're in for luck. You have an extra reason to be happy. Why? Because in the Shema, which is the most powerful prayer we say every single day, more than once, twice a day at least, and some people say 3 times, 4 times, etc., but the obligation is to say it in the morning for Shachrit and the evening service. So in the Shema it says there, God gives us, we know there's 248 positive commandments, 365 negative commandments, and what does it say in the Shema? V'loi sasuru achrei levavchem ve'achrei einechem asher atem zonim achreihem. You should not go astray after your heart and your eyes that you go astray from. In other words, what is this commandment telling us? The author quantifies the commandment. Is this commandment talking to tzaddikim, righteous people? How can it be? A righteous person doesn't have negative thoughts. A righteous person only thinks positive thoughts. Action, speech for sure, but even thoughts, a righteous person has no negative thoughts. So we're not talking about what? Who? We're not talking about a Tzadik. Who are we talking about? We're talking about a Beinoni or a Rasha. Now, a Rasha, he gets the negative thoughts, gets what? He loves it. This is what he does all day. He thinks negative thoughts, inappropriate thoughts. So, the righteous man never gets them. The wicked man gets them and loves them. So who is V'loi sasuru achrei levavchem talking about? So the author says very simple. It's talking about the Beinoni. It's talking about the intermediate guy that gets the thoughts, but he has a choice. What's his choice? He doesn't have a choice not to get them because he gets them. So he gets them. So what's his choice?
Transform them.
The choice is either he could delve into it, and you know where that's going.
Yeah.
Rasha land. Rasha land, right? No pun intended. Or he can say, no, out. I don't want you. I'm not accepting it. I saw it. I thought about it for a second, but out. And as he saw it, he felt it, but the minute he sees it and he felt it, well, he has no control of that first look, that first feeling. Right. Out.
As soon as he's aware of it.
As soon as he feels it and is aware of it and sees it and etc., out. So the Alter Rebbe says when you say out, or you push delete, however you want to graphically or mentally or emotionally tackle it, whether it's out, delete, or you totally block it out, you are at that moment, guess what? If you were in kindergarten, they'd put a star on your forehead. Right? Or if you're an older guy, they'd give you a thumbs up. You just now fulfilled a negative precept, which is actually exclusively to you. Think about it. This is an exclusive commandment to the Beinoni. Why? Again, the Tzadik doesn't have this opportunity, so he can never fulfill this one. Because the minute he does, he's no more a Tzadik. So a Tzadik never can fulfill it. A Rasha has zero interest in fulfilling it. It's too hard, too difficult. I'd rather just embrace the thought and go with it until I destroy myself. The Beinoni has the power and the choice. At any time when that enters his mind, what does he do? Loisasuru. I'm not going to focus in on it. I'm not going to engage in it. I'm totally going to ignore it. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. It's probably easier to be the Rasha. But we're not looking for an easier life. We're looking for a more meaningful life and a more rewarding life. But guess what? The Alter Rebbe says, there comes a prize with fulfilling this negative precept. What's the prize? You can be happy. Not only happy, very happy. Why? Because you just now, at this moment, fulfilled a negative precept of a. So therefore, guess what? It's like winning the lottery, the spiritual lottery. You just now were tested by the klipot, sitra achra, the devil, the Yitzchok, the Satan, whichever name you want to call it, that was throwing you a curveball, and hopefully he was hoping you would bite it or grab it. And what would happen to you?
You'd be sad.
You would actually go astray, and he has you now. But instead, v'leisasuru, you were a big boy, big girl, an adult, mature, and you said, I'm not accepting it. So therefore, since the minute you didn't accept it, what happens now?
You choose joy.
You fulfilled a negative precept, and you chose joy, and you can actually be very, very, very happy. So the Alter Rebbe says, good morning. You're telling me that I have all these terrible thoughts. Guess what? Bingo! You won the lottery. Because now you have a reason to be happy. Because if you didn't have these negative thoughts, you'd be nothing. How can you fulfill the commandment? So because you're being thrown these curveballs, you have a reason to be happy. They're after you. After you, not in a way where they're going to destroy you. After you, to give you an opportunity to be happy. So therefore, a person should always be happy. Oh, you have negative thoughts? Erroneous thoughts? Guess what? Remember in Shema it says, don't go astray? Do that. And guess what? You just scored a point. And your spiritual bank account is getting bigger and bigger. And that spiritual bank account, guess what? No one can take away from you. Not in this world, and in the world to come, you can cash it in big time. And those are the only points that work there. You know, the dollar bills don't work there. You need to have these points. The Loisasuru from this world will help you in the world to come. So the Alter Rebbe says, great, we got somewhere. But a person says, well, you know, I'm still sad. Why? Because why do I have to have these thoughts? Why do I have to have these thoughts? Why can't I just not have the thoughts? I mean, think about it. It's a wholly altruistic question. Why do I have to have these thoughts? Right? You would think it's a sincere, holy question. So the Alter Rebbe takes this attitude to task in a very strong way, and he says as follows. Really, What bothers you is you have these thoughts. So the Alter Rebbe says what's extremely important in life is to be honest who you are and what your life's mission and purpose is. The mere fact that you can say that it bothers you that you have these thoughts, guess what? You're not being an honest man. Why? Because be an honest person. Are you a tzaddik?
No.
No. You're not a tzaddik. What's the proof you're not a tzaddik?
We have these thoughts.
Because you have these thoughts. So since you have the thoughts, you're not a tzaddik. Are you a Rasha? Right? Let's hope not.
No.
Correct. So therefore, you are a Beinoni. So the mere fact that you can question, why do I have these thoughts? A Rasha has the thoughts, a Beinoni has the thoughts. But you're saying, why do I have the thoughts to begin with? You're saying, hey, why am I not a tzaddik? You're not a tzaddik. That's the way God created you. So therefore, the mere fact that you can come along and say what? Why am I having these thoughts? You're not being honest. Not only are you not being honest, you're actually being arrogant. You're trying to be a tzaddik, and that's who you are. You're not being honest, and you're being arrogant. So in other words, the Alter Rebbe says, first of all, be honest of who you are. Because once you'll be honest of who you are, you know what's going to happen right now? Now you'll know what your Avodah is. You'll know what your work in this world is. Why is that important? So the Alter explains as follows. That God created two types of personalities in this world. He created, as the prophet Job says, tzaddikim. What's a tzaddik? A righteous man. What's a righteous man? As we discussed in Tanya before, all his actions are godly and holy. All his speech are godly and holy, and all his thoughts. That's a tzaddik. He doesn't have pop-ups in his head or in his computer. They just don't come up. He has the best filter system. He doesn't see, even if it came up, you wouldn't see it. That's a tzaddik. A Rasha, who God created, means, in the big scheme, he has pop-ups constantly coming up. Terrible thoughts, negative thoughts, hateful thoughts, anger thoughts, whatever, all these terrible thoughts coming up. The Rasha chooses to do what? To engage in it. Oh my gosh, you heard this person and gets into gossip and all this terrible thoughts, he engages it and he destroys his life. So where does the Beinoni fall in? So the Beinoni in a certain level is like the Rasha, where he gets pop-ups. But the difference is the Beinoni pushes him down. And every time he pushes him down, he is fulfilling the negative precept that was mentioned before, and he's adding more simcha to his life. And the Alter Rebbe says, not only shouldn't you be arrogant, you shouldn't be arrogant or dishonest, you should be honest of who you are and realize this is why you were created. Once you know this is why you were created, guess what? Life becomes easy. You know, we know it says that, interesting, because this week's Torah portion about Amalek came and brought doubt into the Jewish people. What is doubt? Doubt is the worst thing. Because when you know clearly this is right, this is wrong, life is simple. When you have doubt, that's confusion. And we know it says in the Talmud, there's no greater joy than removing doubt. There's no greater joy than removing doubt. If you're able to remove any doubt, wow, you're going to really be happy. So knowing who you are, what your life's mission is, now it's simple. You know that you're not a tzaddik. You know that you're like a Rasha in the sense that you have thoughts that will come up, but you do know that you have the power and the ability to not engage, ignore it, and by doing that, you're fulfilling your life's purpose and your life's mission, and creating real joy because you have work to do in this world. And the Alter Rebbe goes into explain here, from a Kabbalistic perspective, the different Avodah, the different work that the Tzadik does in the world and the Beinoni does in the world. In other words, the Rasha doesn't really do any spiritual work. What's his spiritual work? He just engages in any negative thought, any hateful conversation, any animosity, any criticism. That's the Rasha land. So that's not spiritual work. He basically does by default whatever's coming his way. So what does that mean? The Beinoni is the only one that has work? No, the Tzadik has his work, which we're going to define, and the Beinoni has his work, which we're going to define. And the author explains what's the difference between the work of a Tzadik in this world and the work of a Beinoni. And the author explains as follows. And I'm going to tell you the words in Hebrew and I'll translate. The Tzadik's Avodah, which means spiritual work in this world, is something which is called Iskafya. Iskafya means full transformation. The Beinoni's Avodah in this work is restraint. Two different levels of work. What does it mean practically? Very simple. The Tzadik, what he does in this world is, he transforms everything to a place where it's totally holy and totally godly. So there's no dealing with negativity, and there's no dealing with struggle, it's just bringing light into the world. So the job of the Tzadik is to bring light into the world. He sees the light, he brings the light, and he inspires people to reach the light. That's called Iskafya. And if there's something negative that takes place, it's a full transformation. He only sees the positive in it. Anything of negativity doesn't go in the radar. Now, the Beinoni, on the other hand, what's his avodah in this work? Restraint. He'll never do a full transformation. He'll never get rid of the pop-ups or the crazy thoughts and ideas. They're always going to be there. But his power is, it comes up, pushes it down. Comes up, ignores it. And his whole life is doing what? Knocking things down. Not engaging. See, the Tzadik engages, but because he's such a high level, he can engage and it doesn't affect him. Because he doesn't really engage like the Beinoni does. He does it from a high, very high level. The Beinoni engages to the point of just restraint. Not elevation, not transformation, restraint. So now, what happens when the Beinoni practice? What happens when the Beinoni practice restraint? So the author explains something really, really, very, very insightful. That even though technically it might look like, from a certain perspective, the Tzadik is a very high level. Why? Because what's the Tzadik doing in this world? He's bringing a light to the world. He's not dealing with anything negativity. It's a higher level on a certain level. But on the other hand, the author explains that the truth is, the Beinoni draws down a greater light of God, more powerful light of God than the Tzadik, into this physical world. Why? Because he has the struggle with erroneous thoughts, inappropriate thoughts, and he's able to say, I'm not engaging. That requires a lot of effort and energy. And as he creates that restraint in this world, I mean, he doesn't allow the negativity to fester in this world, what happens is on the spiritual level, he doesn't allow it to fester either. So, it's like whatever you're doing in this world, you have a spiritual counterpart. So as he practices restraints here, it creates restraint on a much higher level. And the author says a fascinating idea, and he says like this, that he gives an example. He says, very simple. Take, for example, you're eating something. You're eating something. So you can eat something which is sweet, right? Sugar, honey, etc. So you eat it, it's sweet, correct? So it's sweet. It's very nice, it's sweet. But then you can take something which is not necessarily sweet, let's say bitter, garlic, an onion, whatever it may be, and you put in spices on it, and guess what happens? All of a sudden when you eat it, it's not bitter that you can eat it. You can eat it and actually tastes very well. And the author says, for an analogy, that's basically the two different types of service that the Tzadik does and the Beinoni does in this world. The Tzadik's avodah is like what? Eating honey and sugar. He's not doing anything. It's sweet, but there was no major transformation. On the other hand, the Beinoni is like someone taking something which is bitter, spicing, putting in the right spices, making it really, really good, and he took something which wasn't necessarily so edible, and now he transformed it into a beautiful dish in honor of, let's say, Shabbat. Right?
Made it palatable.
Correct. Now, so this not only works, let's say, in a negative situation, But even, for example, let's say, for example, you get up in the morning, right? You get up in the morning, and you have your routine. You wash Minkowicz the first thing in the morning, you shower up, you take a shower, and then you do your prayers. And let's say, for example, I don't know, you eat breakfast every morning, 9 o'clock, correct? Now, why do you eat breakfast? Because you need to have physical nourishment. Now, the godly soul, does the godly soul really care about the breakfast? No. He just knows if you don't eat, eventually you're going to die. So he wants you obviously to eat. The animal soul, does he want that breakfast?
That's all he thinks
about. That's all he thinks about. Now does he want it 9 o'clock, already from 7 o'clock, he's already thinking about when is breakfast going to be, right? And all the different tastes, etc. So the Alter Rebbe says, what happens if you eat every single day consistently 9 o'clock, for let's say from 9 to 9:30, and you say, you know what, I want to basically practice a little restraint. I want to work on my Nefesh Bahamas. So what am I going to do? Instead of eating at 9 o'clock, and I've been doing it for years, I'm going to, instead of 9 o'clock, I'm going to eat at 10 o'clock. And from 9 to 10, I'm going to study Torah. Now, are you starving the animal soul? No. In 1 hour, he's going to eat. He's going to eat in 1 hour. In that hour, are you going out and just doing nothing? Gossiping? No, because then you would be defeating the purpose, because you're feeding the animal soul another way. In other words, I guarantee if you, instead of eating, you had a good hatred conversation about somebody, the animal soul's fine with that. That's in his league. So that you didn't accomplish much. Believe me, he wouldn't mind not eating. Right? You ever be involved like in a not God for us, but at present company excluded. You ever involved like in a negative conversation about attacking somebody? Who eats? Right? You forget about eating. Why? Because the animal soul feels great. He is getting his nourishment from negativity. But I'm talking, instead of talking God for the negative, but instead you study Torah from 9 to 10 and you eat at 10 o'clock. That, what you're doing is actually, you're practicing restraint, you're restraining the animal soul, and you're training him to be a little more refined. That's also called Iskafya, not necessarily from sinning, but from overly indulging and being too excited about the materialistic world in a physical way. Now, so here what the Alter is trying to teach us is something very, very profound. Ultimately, what do we want to be? We want to be holy people. I mean, isn't that what we want to be? We want to be holy people?
Yes.
We want to be holy people. So how do you become holy people? So far we learned 2 ways, right? One way is a negative thought comes up, a bad thought comes up. First, push delete. Don't engage. Don't think about it. In other words, you're going to have negative thoughts come up. You're going to have erroneous thoughts come up. Inappropriate thoughts come up. That's a given. That's the nature of the way God created the Beinoni. The power we have is not touching it, not engaging it. And it's not easy, because sometimes it's not only you. Sometimes it's someone else. Hey, you heard what happened? And it's hard to say, well, I'd love to talk to you. Let's talk about something else, right? Because you don't want to be like the oddball. You don't want to be the nerd, right? So you engage. But meanwhile, actually, who are you engaging with? The devil. So that's one way. You don't engage with that. Second way we learned is what? Anything materialistic that's really enjoyable, I'm not saying don't do it, because you're not eating out of a treif, you're eating kosher food, kosher breakfast. We're saying instead of eating it now, wait a half hour, and that's half hour study Torah. I know a person in his house, let's say if lunch is called for 12 o'clock, he says, guess what, we're going to have a shiur, we're going to study from 12 to 12:30, 12:30 is lunch. Guess what? That's a great thing. Why? Because you're basically telling the animal soul who's in charge. So that's in that area.
And you don't have to enjoy it that much.
Correct. Here you're going to learn something very, very powerful, which would literally make a major shift in everything that you do. In other words, like this. What is the basic difference between the animal and the godly soul? And here you're going to see how you can literally have an automatic shift from the animal soul to the godly soul. Once you know the difference. What's the difference between the animal soul and the godly soul?
The soul is derived by God. And
the what?
By God.
No, everything's from God. Everything's from God. God created the animal soul. Interpret that in terms of how can you define the godly soul and the animal soul? Very simple.
Godly soul practices restraint.
Very good. The godly soul practices restraint, absolutely. And the animal soul is
It's for survival.
instinctive,
Oh, instinctive, that's good.
right? The animal soul wants it when? Now.
Now.
Hot, right? Hot and now. That's what the animal soul wants. And the godly soul, by definition, restraint. So let's say, for example, you have a thought. We're not talking bad. Obviously, we spoke about the negative ones. We're talking, let's say you want to do something, whatever it may be. Now, here's the question. Is it coming from the godly soul or the animal soul? Here's the test. If I tell you, let's wait a little bit. If you can wait, then you know it's coming from the godly place. If you know, I need to do it right now, I can guarantee you it's not coming from the godly place. I'm not saying it's coming from a bad place, but it's coming from the animal soul. So if you want to check it out, whether it's from the animal soul or the godly soul, very simple test. See if you can wait. See if you can wait. Not only that, but let's say you want to do something. I say, you know what, let's wait an hour. I'm not saying we're not going to do it, let's do it, but let's do it in an hour. And you actually wait out the hour, guess what? You just brought a godly experience to the whole experience. You're doing the same thing. We're doing the same exact thing. But all I'm saying, let's wait an hour. Let's wait 1 hour. The waiting the hour accomplishes tremendous. You took a animal instinctive desire, which doesn't necessarily mean it was bad, and you transformed it into a holy experience by waiting. There's something very powerful by switching from instinctive, which is basically the animal, to basically a thought-out process and allowing it to develop, which becomes a godly thing. So in other words, the minute someone tells you, it's the last one, you have to do it right now, you know, who's he talking to? The animal soul. It's from his animal to your animal soul. The best thing you can say, listen, I need 1 hour. Guess what happens now? Now, either it's going to be really animalistic and you're not going to do it, or the other person's not going to want, and then it's done. Great, wonderful, you don't fall in. Or it was something neutral that you actually transformed. It's like you add salt and pepper to a dish. What does it do to it? It spices it up a little. So the waiting is like, if it's appropriate, we'll add some nice salt and pepper to something, which will actually make it a nice and beautiful experience. And that's why it's interesting is the Torah, there's a commandment that says as follows. The Torah says like this. V'yiskadishtem, and you should be holy. V'yisem k'toshim, then you'll become holy. So the question is, hey, are we holy or not holy? And the answer is very, very simple. God created us with a godly soul and animal soul. We're neutral human beings. If we practice if we practice being holy, what does it mean you practice being holy? And again, what did we say? What's the difference between holy and non-holy? What does holy do?
Practices restraint.
Restraint, exactly. So the commandment is be holy. What does that mean? What am I asking you? Just
practice.
Practice restraint. As you practice restraint, guess what? It's not easy. Then God says, then you will be holy. Why? Because I will come and I will help you stay holy and overcome all these, sometimes these overpowering and these strong inclinations that are evil or bad or destructive or non-productive, etc. But by practicing v'hiskadishtem, you will eventually become holy. So in other words, you see from this chapter in Tanya, chapter 27, which is a very, very important chapter in Tanya, the author is defining that being happy is something you can always be happy, and not only always be happy when life is great, but even amidst the struggle and the challenge and that terrible thought, the author says, during that terrible thought, put on the biggest smile. Why? Because right now, you have the opportunity to push the delete button, and you are fulfilling the commandment of what? Don't go astray. And to start thinking, well, how come I even having these thoughts? No, that's wrong. Because that's your mission in this world. This is your mission. This is who you are. And as you practice what your mission is, you actually what did the Alter Rebbe say? You draw down a greater light than a Tzadik can bring down to this world. Through your Avodah of Iskafya, which Iskafya is talked about for tremendous in Kabbalah and mysticism, because that's really our day-to-day struggle. Our day-to-day struggle from morning to the night, throughout the week and throughout the month, throughout the years, is one Avodah, Iskafya. Can I practice restraint? And the more you learn how to practice restraint, guess what happens? The holier you become, your life becomes full of meaning and purpose. And more importantly, what happens when you practice restraint, who becomes the domineering force and the active force and the default response in your life is your godly soul. Again, it's not easy, and it's an avodah, it's work that doesn't stop. But once you at least have the awareness that this is your service, and you know what your so to speak, your to-do list for the day is, and you know clearly what your job description is, now you just got to follow it. So really what the Alter Rebbe does in this chapter, he defines to you very clearly your job description. Now that you know your job description, it takes away 80% of the struggle. Most of the times we don't even know what hit us. We have these thoughts, like where's it coming from? No, this is part of the plan. God planned it. But guess what? Now that you know your job description, it's very simple. You know what happens when those things come? Put on a big smile. Why? Because you're fulfilling now the commandment of following and doing your job in this world. And by doing your job, you'll become holy. And when you do your part to become holy, by a simple method of practicing what? Restraint, exactly. God will help you, and you'll be able to overcome other areas where there's stronger restraint that's necessary. You might necessarily have the power. God will give you the power to overcome restraint in areas where you don't necessarily have the power to do so.